Good evening, everybody. My name is Robert Thomas Jr., and I'm your host, and this is today's episode of The Real News Behind the News. Today is October 12th, 2014, and this is going to be a abbreviated version of today's show because I'm having to do it on my own. My buddy Josh White is not able to be with me today. And we're still going to, bring you the real news behind the news. Now, we want to start off with some breaking news on the Ebola virus situation. It has come out today that one of the primary caregivers for Thomas Eric Duncan, the first Ebola patient in America who died this week, one of the caretakers for him, a nurse at the hospital where he was being cared for, has been diagnosed with the disease. And what is so peculiar about that is that this woman was supposed to have had taken all the necessary precautions, such as using hazardous material suits or whatever so-called precautions that the Center for Disease Control has, basically laid out for healthcare officials. And she still contracted the disease, which lets us know that we have been lied to from the beginning, that this virus is spreading in other ways than just touching the bodily secretions of people. I mean, let me just keep it real with you people. I mean, look at what's happening in Liberia. You got, as of right now, close to 3,000 people that have died from the disease just in the last few months. And, there's been probably about, last time I checked, it was close to 4,000 to 5,000 who were literally infected with the disease. Now, excuse me for being real and being kind of harsh, but there's nowhere in the world you can tell me that 5,000 people, have gotten infected because they touched either the saliva, the piss, or the poop, or sweat, or tears of somebody else. No, this virus is spreading in other ways, and I do believe that it is airborne. It may have started out that way when they first engineered it and created the virus, but we must be aware that this virus, at last count, has mutated close to 300 times since, I think it was March of this year. Either way it goes, the virus has a ability to mutate rapidly. So that same virus that they was dealing with in Liberia back in March is not the same virus that they're dealing with today. And we have to keep that in mind and be cautious and leery when we listen to the information that's being put out by the public officials. Because you got to understand, first and foremost, the public officials do not want a public panic to get out, because that in itself could cause the stock market, the economy, to literally crash overnight. Think about it. If you was afraid that the person, 3 or 4 people in your office had the Ebola virus, would you be anxious to go to work the next day? You see what I'm saying? So they have to keep a lid on the situation as best as possible. So what we try to do is be that intermediate vehicle that tells you what it is exactly that they are not telling you. You know what I'm saying? For to avoid mass panic. Because again, and another reason that they won't tell you the truth is because of the corporations who stands to gain a lot by things being continued under the status quo, namely the airline industry. Why is it that France, Britain, and Germany, and all these other countries in Europe have literally completely banned all flights out of Western Africa? All the countries that where Ebola is spreading rapidly. All these other nations in the world have banned flights. But here in the United States, we're less than a couple of weeks away from one of the busiest travel seasons, and during the time of the year. So they are literally protecting the airlines. They don't want the airline industry to suffer a major catastrophic financial loss. But at the same time, that's pretty pathetic when they're willing to put the profits of the airline before the safety of the public. Also, there's a lot that they don't want to tell you, like some of the things that the people in Africa have found that might go a long way to help them fighting the virus, which is something as simple as the black light. I think you can find black lights in the head shops. It's those little lights, you know what I'm saying, you put in, and you know, when it's dark, it makes everything different colors or whatever. But those lights emit high ultraviolet frequencies, and that has been known to kill the virus. Also, colloidal silver. Now, you have to be careful when you're making it on your own, but there was one scientist over in Liberia who found that using colloidal silver helped Ebola patients dramatically. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a cure, because as of right now, I don't think you could ever find a cure for a virus, because a virus is just that, a virus. It's a living organism. It adapts to whatever harmful stimulus are in its environment. It adapts just like we as humans, you know what I'm saying, to cope and survive in that environment. So again, I don't think they'll ever find a cure, but they want to make sure one thing. They want to make sure that you, the average Joe, don't find this cure and cure yourself. No, because if you do that, then the big pharmaceutical companies can't make no money. So again, it's another case, an example of them putting profit before the public's health and safety. So, you know, when I go back and look at the whole sequence of events, in my conspiracy theory type mind, I'm thinking that this thing, to me, there's no other explanation that as to it had to have been strategically planned. Now, the virus may have been accidentally unleashed in Africa, but since then, I do believe that the American government had some kind of knowledge or awareness that this virus would eventually hit the United States. Why else would, in late August, early September, they go out and buy 160,000 hazmat suits? Why would they go out and warn funeral home directors around the country on how to properly dispose of bodies contaminated with the Ebola virus? You know, you have to start asking serious questions. You cannot take what these people are telling you word for word, because it has been proven, documented hundreds of thousands of cases that our government does lie to us. So, protect your family in whatever way you can. My advice to everybody is I'm not going to tell everybody just go out and be afraid and, you know, trying to cause panic. No, that is not our mission here, to be fear-mongers or try to cause a panic. Our mission is actually to inform you, because, you know, there's an ancient proverb, chance favors the prepared. And if you can be prepared, you know, intellectually with the knowledge that you need before these things become a crisis, the better chance you have of surviving a crisis. And on the cool, I believe that we have been socially conditioned to prepare for something like this a long time ago without us even knowing it. Think about it. Tonight, the day is October the 12th. Tonight is a season premiere of The Walking Dead. And that's one of the most popular shows on television. Well, in reality, it's not far-fetched, now that you look at the Ebola virus, that a nightmare scenario like this is very possible, because we are literally starting to see it. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to see dead folks getting up, walking around, biting people's brains or whatever. But when you look at what the Ebola virus does to a person's body and how, you know, it destroys the tissues and this and that, you can literally see somewhat of a zombie type scenario where there's actually people walking around with these, you know, with these balls and all these other, you know, you can actually get an understanding of what is going on. You know, and then too, it could be due to the nuclear war that's eventually about to break out, because again, my friends, the United States is steadily trying to push a war with Russia. Also, at this moment that I'm speaking to you now, the United States government is over in China trying to instigate a revolt in China. And the Chinese are not about to go for that. The Chinese are already telling those protesters, look, we know the Americans are putting y'all up to this. We're not finna give you what you're asking for, because whatever you're asking for is really being asked for by the United States government. See what is happening again. January 1st, the BRIC, B-R-I-C, is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, Iran, and China. All these nations have joined a coalition, an economic coalition, where they have basically kicked the dollar to the curb, and all currency and all transactions will be done in those countries' main currency. And the United States knows that its dollar is about to crash and is on the decline everywhere in the world. So what they're doing now is going throughout the world, trying to basically gather up as much riches through solid resources as they possibly can. This is why I do believe that this virus, the Ebola virus, was specifically engineered, genetically engineered to target the immune systems of black people. Again, it might have been mistakenly unleashed because they probably was not finished completely weaponizing it so that it can specifically be designed to target specifically the DNA of black people. But their whole intention for creating this was to eventually wreak havoc and hopefully wipe out as much as the population of the continent of Africa as they could, which would make it easier for them to go in and take over all those resources over there, the gold, the silver, the oil, the diamonds, without having to send a soldier over there to fire a shot. Now, we are been made aware that over, I think it was 2 weeks ago, President Obama signed an order sending 3,000 troops to Liberia and other countries in Africa. Again, I ask the question, what can a soldier do against the Ebola virus? You know, there's nothing a soldier can do against the Ebola virus. But on the other hand, a soldier can be sent to one of these hot zones so that they can gain valuable training and experience on how to round up sick people, going door to door, rounding up sick people and herding them off into concentration camps. Well, in Liberia, they're calling them now community care centers, which is another way, more politically sanitized way of saying concentration camp. Because what they're doing is anybody over there suspected of having this virus, they round them up and they take them to a big old concentration camp and basically just leave them there to die. This is what those soldiers, I believe, we here at Real News Behind the News believe is actually going on. Those soldiers have been sent over there as a training procedure. And if all 3,000 of them come down and contact the virus and happen to die or come back here and continue to spread, it makes no difference. Because the lessons that they will learn as far as going from door to door, rounding up citizens, will already be, be learned. So they're going to implement that in here. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm believing that this is really the situation that they're going to use to declare the martial law that they have been trying to declare. We see how eager and willing they are to do that by just looking at the situation down in Ferguson, Missouri. When you see that Israeli Defense Force trained police organization come in and clamping down on the citizens the way in Ferguson, Missouri, the way that they did, you know that they are in full-fledged practice for martial law, which they are about to implement real soon. So again, with this Ebola virus thing, it's getting scary, y'all, and I'm not here to spread panic even, any more than what it already is out there, but we must think. Because like I say, just 3 weeks ago, this virus was almost 10,000 miles away on the other side of the world. Now it's less than 200 miles away from us here in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's a lot more going on than what they're telling us, my friends, but you can take charge and find out the information for yourself. Turn off CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. You can't trust them. They all work for the government. They're all giving talking points every morning from the CIA as to what to say, what they can and what they cannot tell you. You see what I'm saying? The government dictates all that. If you study Operation Mockingbird, you'll understand what I'm talking about, how the CIA infiltrated Hollywood, newspaper, radio, and regular TV back in the early 40s and late 40s and 50s. They infiltrated because they knew that propaganda was the best form of keeping control of the people, and the best way to spread that propaganda was through the media. So again, turn off those mainstream media stations and find you a couple of independent media, trustworthy, and I guess just basic trustworthy independent media sources, and gather all your information. Because again, you will not get the truth behind what's going on dealing with the mainstream media. There was quite a few things we wanted to talk about, but again, I'm doing this video, on the spur of the moment, just to continue putting truth out there. But I do want to go back to the situation over in Iraq and Syria. And I don't like to, keep beating a dead horse, but I cannot stress the importance of us as American citizens coming together and notifying our senators and our congressmen that we do not want to send our children to any more wars in any country, especially those countries with oil. Because even if they so-called are fighting so-called ISIS that they created, you see what I'm saying? It's all behind the oil. Now, what is actually going on in Syria, we alluded to this last week, but they are literally over in the Middle East, basically invading a country that has done nothing to them in Syria. They're saying that ISIS has taken refuge in Syria. Well, first of all, let's go back and look at the origin of ISIS. All the way back from the time when Zbigniew Brzezinski and I think it was the Ford administration first created Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda was created and used by the CIA as a destabilizing agent. They would send Al-Qaeda into nations throughout the world, in the Muslim world specifically, to create chaos and instability in the countries. And they would, send them in there, they would arm them, and they would, wreak havoc. And the United States would come in some kind of way, making themselves to be like the savior. Hey, we saved the day. So now they go in, overthrow the government, and then install a puppet government, and then they move Al-Qaeda to the next, to the next country that they want to take over. So now what we have is Al-Qaeda, then played out. Because you stop and think about it, we're supposed to be chasing Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now Al-Qaeda has moved all the way from Afghanistan and Iraq, changed their name, and now they're in Syria. Come on, man. How many terrorist groups, going to change their name after 20, 30 years of using that same name? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the whole story behind this whole terrorist thing, it really just don't add up. You know what I'm saying? You started out fighting Al-Qaeda in the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. This is the first lie you tell us, when in reality we know what really was going on in Afghanistan. It ain't about terrorism in Afghanistan. It's about heroin. It's about the poppy and heroin. Afghanistan. You stop and think about it. Let me ask you a question. Which do you think is more valuable? A 55 gallon barrel of oil, or the same 55-gallon barrel full of heroin? You do the math. If you got any kind of business skills, you know which one worth the more. That's really why they're in Afghanistan right now. It's no coincidence since soon as the United States went into Afghanistan, heroin use throughout the world multiplied by 1,000%. Addictions to opiates such as Oxycontin and morphine, these addictions have multiplied almost 1,000%. In reality, your government, our government, is the biggest drug dealing entity in the world. They have soldiers right now as we speak guarding the heroin field, the poppy fields in Afghanistan. You can go on the internet and do search. You can pull them up all over the place. They're literally guarding the poppy field. Well, here in America, they're telling us there's a war on drugs. I guess it's only war on the low-level drug dealers here. You see what I'm saying? Because the big drug dealers are sitting right up there in Washington, D.C., dictating how much of that heroin is going where, to what countries, when it's going. Just like the CIA was responsible for creating the crack epidemic back in the 80s. Now the United States government, again, is back into the dope dealing business in heroin, in Afghanistan with the heroin. But going back to the Taliban and Al Qaeda. Now we attacked them talking about terrorism, and didn't find nothing materialized. So now they want to attack Saddam Hussein, saying that he had something to do with 911. No, we know he really didn't have nothing to do with 911, but he's holding weapons of mass destruction to get in there, tear the folks' country up. Didn't even, like I say, didn't even find a paper cap gun, And now they moved from Iraq, changed their name, and now we're calling them ISIS, and they're supposed to be in Syria. When again, the reality of what is going on in Syria is that the United States is literally trying to take over the Syrian government so that they can replace it with a puppet government which will allow their oil to be sold only on the petrodollar. Same thing, is fixing to happen to Iraq. Remember, you heard this first right here. I'm willing to bet that within, say, by the end of springtime next year, they will have come up with a new terrorist group or a new ploy to get you to accept a war with Iran. Because General Wesley Clark, he let the cat out the bag when he said that they had a plan to take over the 8 leading oil nations in the Middle East. And they've pretty much taken over all of them except 3. And those 3 are Syria, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. So any of you guys from Saudi Arabia listening, while you out there helping the United States right now carve up Iraq and split it up 3 ways, they coming for you all guys next. After they finish with the Iraqis, the Syrians, and the Iranians, which I'm going to be real, I don't think they're going to get past the Iranians, because once they start messing with the Iranians, the Russians and the Chinese are going to get involved, and it's really going to get chaotic. So, again, this is just a brief episode today. We were going to go ahead and end this show for today, and we're going to go ahead and start deeply delving into some research for next week's show. Now, next week's show is going to be very hot because we're going to have a whole range of topics. Oh, one more thing. So much focus has been put on the Ebola virus. Let me give you the name of something real quick. Let me give you the name of this new virus. Well, it's not a new virus, but actually this virus is spreading faster than any other virus that we have seen in the last 5-10 years. And it's that let me pull this up real quick. Give me just 1 second. I wanted to make sure that I mention this to you all because this virus is really affecting the children right now. It's that what's the name of this virus? Oh, give me just a second. I got to let you all know this because your kids really are being targeted, and we're not even knowing it because they're vaccinating your children with a lot of unproven and still experimental vaccines. It's come to light that just a couple of weeks ago they had like 5,000-6,000 kids in Colombia die because of contaminated batch of vaccines. There's a new virus going around that resembles polio in the children, coming to find out that it's a contaminated batch of the polio vaccine. But it's this new the enterovirus. Matter of fact, that's what it is, the enterovirus. They just had a child, I think they had 5 or 6 kids over the last few weeks to die from this virus throughout the country. And it already spread it through 45 of the 50 states, and they just had a child in Michigan die yesterday from it. So I would never tell anybody to be to break a law, to be civil. I always suggest civil disobedience, but there's something that you all must know, that you are entitled to claim a waiver from having your children subjected to these viruses. And I would suggest that you do it. Let your children build up a natural immunity, because that's really what's going to make the Ebola and every other virus in America spread so fast, because we have literally destroyed our immune systems here by being subjected to all these vaccinations and taking all these experimental antibiotics and all the regular antibiotics that these doctors have been giving us. We have taken so many antibiotics and having so many experimental vaccinations shot into us that diseases that they once thought they had eradicated 20, 30, just recently as 10 years ago have come back, and now they have no way of dealing with them. So again, protect your children, you know what I'm saying, by making sure that they get proper rest, that they're fed properly, that they get plenty of vitamin C. Any natural cure that you might can find, you know, remedy to some of the sicknesses that they get, I would suggest that, as opposed to just keep pumping them up full of these medications, because really the only one that's benefit off of these medications is the pharmaceutical company. Especially when you look at the fact that half the side effects is worse than the original diagnosis that you got anyway. So again, to next week, we like to thank you all for supporting us. We noticed that the video that we just posted last week is up almost close to 150 views, and we actually are proud of that, because for our second video, you know what I'm saying, we believe those are good numbers. And we'd like to ask you all to keep supporting us and tell a friend, and let's try to spread the message of the truth to as many people as we possibly can. Until then, again, I am Robert Ray Thomas Jr., and this is The Real News Behind the News. You all be blessed and have a wonderful, blessed day.